Hi. Okay. So I told you guys that I would be, well, the kids that showed up to Zoom, that I would be doing a basic watercolor techniques for the next few weeks. So if you have watercolors at home, awesome, jump on in. If you don't, you do not have to do this, and do a drawing activity or some other kind of creative craft and submit it. So a couple things that I always have. I have paper towels to dry my brushes if I need to. I just have some basic paints from the store, just so you're aware. This is where we mix our paints, okay? And so I just wash mine out. I usually just let it dry and it's good to go. Um, we're gonna do some alcohol. I have alcohol in here, just basic rubbing alcohol, and I use a straw. You guys in class that know about this know I normally use like a little coffee stirrer straw, but I don't have any of those at home. Um, you don't need any grand special brushes. This little, we call this like a little flick test. But this little brush came with the sets, and I have a bunch of them at school. They work great. These little fluffy brushes work great to get the paper wet when we're doing wet on wet. This one's already wet because I used it to wash stuff. And then if you wanted to do some fine drawing, you could have one of these. But you know what? A lot of my work is just a couple brushes. I'm going to use probably just these two, right? A little bit of fluffy to get the water on, and then one to have a little more precision if I need it, okay? So besides that, we're going to do salt. We're going to do rubbing alcohol. We're going to do oil pastel. So I picked out a few colors. And let's see, splatter technique today. So wet on wet, salt, alcohol, pastels, and splatter. So first thing I'm going to start out with is a wet on wet. So at the very end, I've got a dry surface waiting to do some splatter. And so let's talk about our paints for a second. I'm going to put this stuff to the side. I'm trying to get this as a quick video. So here we go. I'm going to put all the rest of this stuff down here because I don't need it. Always have two water containers, okay? I use these two little, they're just plastic. They work great. They were cheap. One is to clean your brush, and one is to have some clean water. When we do wet on wet, which is the first thing that I'm going to do, and hopefully you can all see, I'm going to do it right here. I'm going to do a blue background wet on wet. Wet on wet means that you add some water to your surface and get the paint or the paper wet first with a nice thin coat of water. So let me show you what I do. I usually just get my brush and I usually just dab it on everywhere here, and then I'm going to sweep it around to get a nice even coat. Okay, a little bit more. And just so you're aware, I'm just using some basic paper. It was like $5.99 for a little sheet thing of 30. I got it online at Amazon. It's no big deal. When you use watercolor paper, you want the rough side of the paper up. And here we go. So I've got a nice even layer of water on there, although you can't really tell. It is a nice even layer of water. Now I'm going to mix up some blue paint. So in my little tray here, I use blue a lot. So I'm going to put some blue in this one. And I'm going to add clean water in here. And something that I've just been learning to do since I've really been doing watercolor a lot is not to let the paint sit with water in it. Mix up your paints over here to the side. That's what it's for. You can wash it out easily. But I found that if you just let that paint sit in the little paint pot, then you end up with really gooey, nasty paints because they don't often get the chance to dry. You might have to close them up, put them away. So I've got some blue paint going on here, okay? And it looks like my water kind of dried up here, and I don't want that. So I'm going to add a little bit more water. Should have mixed up my paints first. Okay. I just want to show you what happens when you do wet on wet. Okay, here we go. Let's try this. Got some nice wet paint. Now, isn't that cool? It kind of grows. And although I've got this dot camera, it doesn't really do it justice because it is super cool. But maybe I wanted to actually be able to have a lovely blue sky. or some green grass. Then it allows you to spread your paint out really nicely as well, because that's what I'm going for right now. Okay, and if I start at the bottom down here, maybe I have a little bit more blue. I'm going to spread it out, and that should dry pretty nicely. Okay, I'll leave that. And maybe just for giggles here, maybe I want to add some purple. I'm going, where's my purple? It doesn't look purple, it looks brown. Okay, I cleaned out my brush. I got some fresh water. I'm gonna mix some purple in here, and I'm just gonna give myself some lovely designs. Play around with watercolor. That's what we're doing right now. We're just talking about techniques. This is wet on wet. Okay, I'm gonna rinse my brush. I know you can't really see those, but I'm gonna totally wash it out. And then I'm gonna get my brush clean. Okay, so I am going to next do some salt technique. Salt technique needs to be done on a wet surface. So I'm gonna add a little water to this area and go back and forth. And because I've already got some blue and purple going here, I'm gonna just get some more purple right here. Okay, I'm gonna rinse out my brush. Anytime I want to get some more water, which I do, and I want to add a few more drops of water to this. Okay, and I want to be able to show you what the salt technique does. And so I'm going to, whoa, look at that run. Ooh, it's so cool. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do right there. And I'm going to get some salt. Salt, I have it in a shaker, but I like to put it in my hand and then put it exactly where I want it. And I just realized that this is my salt that has really big grains. This is sea salt, and normally, or kosher salt, you can just use some regular table salt. But I always like to put it in my hand so I can tell exactly where I want it to be. Okay. And what it does is it starts soaking up the paint. And when it is all dry, and then I'm going to leave this salt right here in case I want to use it again. I'll make a little pile off to the side, even though you can't see it. But it sucks up the salt, and what's sucks up the paint. And what's really cool is when it dries and you flake it off, it does some really cool stuff. Okay, so in fact, I thought I brought over a painting to show you. This right here was done with salt, alcohol, and on wet. And the salt just sucked up the purple paint that I put through there, and it made this really cool kind of a sky effect. But let's show you about alcohol technique now. Okay, alcohol is also one that needs to have a wet surface, okay? So I'm gonna make sure to wash out this brush, and I'm gonna go ahead and do some water here, get this going, and we're gonna do alcohol technique. I'm gonna go ahead and do it with blue. So let me get some nice blue wet paint here, soak up my brush. I basically used the same brush this whole time, you guys. Okay, so I want this to be all wet. I need nice wet paint for my alcohol effect. Now, I said at the beginning, I don't have the cool little straws. If you have those little tiny straws, I think they work the best, and you never have to throw it away. You can use it forever because the alcohol will just dry. Okay, you can also do alcohol on shapes, but I'm gonna undo the lid, and this is just an old, used to have dry powder in it, and it's a great seal, and it just has basic rubbing alcohol in it. Now, all of us when we're kids, if you ever use a straw, you go like this, and it holds some liquid in it. So I just want a little bit of liquid. So I never put very much alcohol in these containers. Now, I'm gonna tap it to drop it, because if I had the little straws, you could let go of the end and it would make some cool effects. You could also run it like with the alcohol in the straw. So that is a cool alcohol effect. Something else you can do is put a little bit in, I like to use like a sour cream container or a cottage cheese container lid. Sorry, I'm not totally prepared. So here's like a sour cream lid, and I'm just gonna put a little tiny bit of alcohol in there. Put this lid back on so it doesn't dry out. I'm not needing it. And then I have just a basic, you know, like a water jug or some kind of lid because they don't recycle, so I save them for projects. And you can rub it around so there's alcohol in there and then put that on there too. And so you can do this with little tiny cookie cutters or all different kinds of stuff. And while that's going right there, you know, I saved this salt over here because I want you to know that you can mix and match all these techniques. I want you to try something different. And in case you didn't notice, or maybe you did and I didn't talk about it, was that I divided my paper with tape, but there's no reason that you can't just do little swatches or cut little cards and try different stuff. I'm just gonna add this salt around here. I think regular salt works better, so, but I wasn't thinking when I grabbed my salt shaker. I do have, let's see about this salt. I've got some really fine Himalayan salt. It's kind of pink, so I don't know if that will make a difference, but look how fine that is. I don't know if you can tell, but it's really fine. Let's see if we get, well, you can definitely, ooh, you can see that it takes the paint and just sucks it up into a section. Okay, ooh, I want to try some of that Himalayan salt. Maybe on the next picture we'll do that. Okay, so we've done wet on wet. I don't know if you can see, but that as it dries, that salt is doing cool stuff here. Give you the texture. That's this week's picture was texture. Now we've got some alcohol techniques. So the last thing that I want to show you here before at the end we'll do some splatter. Hopefully this one will be dry because splatter needs to go on dry or else we just get the wet on wet and the color will explode. So right here we are going to do the pastels. Now I picked out 3 colors because those of you who had me know I love to do black over the top of pastels, and I think that sunshines do the coolest job. So I'm just going to do this really quick. These are just oil pastels. You could probably just use crayon as well. I'm going to draw me a little sun, give it some little rays. I know you guys are probably much more artistic than me. And you can take your time. I mean, if you're just spending 30 minutes, that is great and fine and dandy. But if you're into this, then it might be some activity that you want to do outside of what you're doing for school. And I would love to see your work. And then I'm just going to give myself some grass here. And I could have picked a different green, but that's okay. Remember, I'm doing this quickly and I'm not really worried about it. I just want some cool effects. Okay, I feel like something needs to go here. Maybe I'll do an alcohol effect. Maybe it'll be a moon in there, but I'm going to do black because I got to tell you, black over the top of the pastel is super cool. So I'm going to make sure my brush is washed out in the one. I'm going to get some clean water and I'm going to mix up some black. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to add water. Normally I wouldn't be going over the top of my work, but we've got that. Here's black. Normally we just don't use black. Black is like rarely used because it just kind of takes over. But black is really cool over the top of the pastel. So I'm just gonna get me some nice juicy black go here with a lot of pigment. As you can see, that's got a lot of pigment in it. It's very liquidy. Okay, here we go. I'm going to go over the top of the pastel. Ooh, I think I need more liquid. It's kind of thick. Okay, I'm washing out my brush so I can add water to this. I need more water. Get this pigment going. Okay. Anyway, this is really cool. What happens to water and wax? They don't like each other. They don't mix. And so it gives you a really cool effect. I really do love the black over the top of the pastels. You know, and like I said, you can mix any of these techniques where I'm gonna go ahead and mix the pastel, the paint, and I think a little salt and a little alcohol in this one. So look at almost all my black paint is gone. So as you mix, you will probably use whatever. You don't need to wash out your little palette. It will dry really quickly, and then all you have to do is add a little bit more water to it. So we got this going on. This is pretty wet. I am going to try some alcohol. Now, remember I just put a little bit of alcohol in this lid. It's already pretty much all dried out. So let's hope there's enough in here to get some cool effect up here. Ooh, cool. And it gave me what I wanted, kind of like a moon. Yay. That is cool. I love it. And then I'm even going to try some of this Himalayan salt because it's so fine. And I think that we could get a really cool effect around this moon. Like give it some kind of a glowy, frosty effect. And if you use the salt, when it all dries, you just kind of scrape it off. And there we go. Really liking that. Ooh, and this grass almost looks like trees and woods. I'm really liking it. And I don't know, maybe I want some salt over here. Give that a little bit of effect. Maybe we'll do it all over. It'd be like a misty sky at night. Ooh. Okay, this is going to be super cool. Now, okay, I'm gonna put my salt here. To wrap this up, here we go. We did wet on wet. We've done salt. We've done alcohol with a little bit of salt. We did pastels with black wet paint. I did a little alcohol here. I've added a little salt. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you was splatter. Now, this is dry. If you want a true splatter effect, you do not want to do your splatter on wet because it will do just like the wet on wet did. It will just kind of dissolve and you won't get a really good splatter effect. I like to use a little brush for splatter so I have a little more control. So I'm going to grab this little flick brush that I showed you earlier. Okay, and I am going to get some water in here. I'm going to do purple, so I'm adding some more water to my purple, grabbing some more purple. And maybe I want to add some red to that. So I'm going to wash out that brush. Remember, 2 things of water. Wash out the brush, then you can get some clean. And I'm going to add a little bit of water to this red because I'm going to mix red in with that purple. Okay. It'll give me just a little bit of a, I want to clean that out because I don't want to be mixing my colors all over. Clean. Okay, get a little more red. I just want to give it a little reddish purple, a little more of a burgundy cast to it. Okay, now I'm going to splatter. Now, how do you splatter? Well, I can use my hand and I can tap. Okay, got some splatter. Some people do this and flick it, but let's do it. Ooh, that gives you a really fine splatter. But you have to be able to go wash your hands, right? Ooh, look at that fun, fine splatter. Okay, I'm going to clean this out. I'm going to get maybe a little more blue. And let's try that with that blue too. Ooh, I really like, I've never actually flicked it like this because I didn't want to make a big mess, but I really like the fine splatter. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, after it dries totally, then you would take the tape off. I want to show you a sample here. Once you take the tape off, okay, and you can divide up your paper any way you want. Like this one, I divided it up. Next weekend, I will do recordings for the straw technique and some of the other stuff, but you can see splatter and alcohol and pastel and alcohol, salt, wet on wet. Here's some alcohol, salt, wet on wet. Once you're done and you take the tape off, then always put your name and date the work. I think that's good. You should always sign. And then write in the white lines next to your work what you used. Okay, it's pastel with black and with a wash. wet on wet, alcohol, salt, alcohol, salt. This one actually has paper towel cloud, straw effect, dots, and dry brush. So we haven't talked about that yet. Okay, that's it for today. I love ya. I hope that wasn't too long. Bye.